Hello, my name is Ryan, and today, along with my colleague Riley, we will be providing a comprehensive overview as to how people with disabilities use the web. These are the learning outcomes we hope to convey to you by the end of this presentation. The first learning outcome for this presentation is to better understand the diversity of individual abilities. This is followed by the needs and barriers related to people with disabilities through their use of the web. We will then provide a broad overview of some of the most common disabilities, as well as some of the assistive technologies and strategies that can be utilized to improve the user experience with technology. It is important to note that these overviews are by no means all-encompassing, but our hope is that you will at least obtain a greater general knowledge base on these topics. We have provided an overview of the content that you will engage with throughout this presentation here. In the first part of this presentation, I will begin by describing diverse abilities and barriers, followed by some of the reasons why people experience disability or disabilities. I will then cover 5 broad categories of disability. This includes auditory, cognitive learning and neurological, physical, speech, and visual. This will be paired with an overview of web accessibility barriers for people with disability. In the second part of this presentation, Riley will discuss various tools and techniques that can be utilized to create more accessible content for a wide range of users. This includes tools and preferences, perception, hearing, feeling, and seeing, presentation, distinguishing, and understanding, input typing, writing, and clicking, as well as interaction navigating and finding. Riley will then guide you through an activity relating to the topics discussed throughout this presentation. Let's dive into the first part of today's presentation, diverse abilities and barriers. There are many reasons why people may be experiencing varying degrees of a disability or disabilities. Some may have disabilities from birth, like a baby born with a cleft lip. Some may have disabilities caused by an illness or disease, like an adult who begins to develop severe arthritis in their hands. Some may have disabilities caused by an accident, like someone becoming paralyzed and wheelchair-bound following a car crash. And some may have disabilities caused by the development of impairments with age, like a person developing Alzheimer's over their lifetime. Every individual is unique and have diverse abilities, skills, tools, preferences, and exceptions that impact how they use the web. It is important to consider the following aspects. Based on the age of the individual, there may be potential differences in the ways people use assistive technologies or their level of skill with computers and the web in general. Some people may have combinations of different kinds of disabilities, also known as multiple disabilities, which has the potential of limiting their approaches for interacting with the web. Some people have health conditions that affect their stamina, dexterity, or concentration, while others may be experiencing progressive or recurring functional limitations that impact their use of the web in varied ways and at different times. Some may be experiencing temporary impairments, such as those that may occur due to an accident, surgery, or medication. Since these individuals may only experience impairments for a short period of time or have had to adjust to disability later in life, these individuals may not know about accessibility solutions, how to use accessibility features, and may be unaware of their own needs. Finally, some people may be experiencing constraints due to their surroundings or to other situational aspects. The first grouping of disabilities is auditory. 3 auditory disability examples are hard of hearing, deafness, and deaf blindness, which can also be grouped under visual disabilities. Auditory disabilities range from mild or moderate hearing loss to more substantial, uncorrectable hearing loss. In order to use the web effectively, people with auditory disabilities often rely on transcripts and captions, including audio-only content and audio tracks in multimedia. Media players that display captions and provide adjustable text size and colors for captions, options to stop, pause, and adjust the volume of audio content, high-quality foreground audio that is distinguishable from background noise, and the use of simpler text supplemented by images, graphs, and other illustrations. Some barriers for people with auditory disabilities when engaging with the web include audio content without captions and or transcripts, media players that do not display captions, provide volume controls, and or provide options to adjust text size and colors for captions, web-based services that rely on interaction using voice only, and the omission of sign language to supplement information or text that is difficult to read. The second grouping of disabilities is cognitive, learning, and neurological. 9 cognitive, learning, and neurological disability examples include attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, also known as ASD, intellectual disabilities, mental health disabilities, memory impairments, multiple sclerosis, perceptual disabilities, and seizure disorders. Cognitive, learning, and neurological disabilities often involve neurodiversity and neurological disorders, as well as behavioral and mental health disorders that may not necessarily be neurological in nature. These disabilities can affect any part of the nervous system, most commonly impacting hearing, movement, sight, speaking, as well as information comprehension. Since these types of disabilities include a wide range of diverse impairments, web developers need to consider web accessibility requirements that encompass facets of hearing, physicality, speech, and sight. Individuals with these disabilities often rely on clearly structured content that facilitates overview and orientation, consistent labeling of forms, buttons, and other content parts, predictable link targets, functionality, and overall interaction, diverse ways of navigating websites, options to suppress blinking, flickering, flashing, and other distracting content, and simpler text supplemented by images, graphs, and other illustrations. Some barriers for people with cognitive learning and neurological disabilities when navigating the web include complex navigation mechanisms and page layouts that are difficult to understand and use, complex sentences that are difficult to read, and unusual words that are difficult to understand, long passages of text without images, graphs, or other illustrations, moving, blinking, or flickering content, as well as background audio that cannot be turned off, web browsers and media players that do not provide mechanisms to suppress animations and audio, and visual page designs that cannot be adapted using web browser controls or custom style sheets. The third grouping of disabilities is physical. 8 physical disability examples are amputation, arthritis, fibromyalgia, reduced dexterity, muscular dystrophy, repetitive stress injuries, also known as RSIs, tremor and spasms, and quadriplegia. Physical disabilities are also commonly referred to as motor disabilities, since they include weakness and limitations of muscular control, limitations of sensation, joint disorders, pain that impedes movement, as well as missing limbs. The use of specialized hardware and software is therefore often required for these individuals. This includes ergonomic or specially designed keyboards and or mouse, head pointers, mouse sticks, and other typing aids, on-screen keyboards with trackballs, joysticks, and other pointing devices, switches that can be operated by the foot, shoulder, sip and puff, or other movements, as well as voice recognition, eye tracking, and other hands-free interactions. Since physical disabilities most directly affect motor skills, these individuals may require more time to type, click, or carry out other interactions. They may also type single keystrokes in sequence rather than typing simultaneous keystrokes to activate commands. Finally, those with physical disabilities may have trouble clicking small areas and are more likely to make mistakes in typing and clicking. Some important design aspects for people with physical disabilities concerning web usage include providing large, clickable areas as well as enough time to complete tasks, the inclusion of error correction options on forms, providing visible indicators of the current focus, and mechanisms to skip over blocks like page headers and navigation bars. Barriers for people with physical disabilities include websites, web browsers, and authoring tools that do not provide full keyboard support, insufficient time limits to respond or complete tasks like online forms, controls, including links with images of text that do not have equivalent text alternatives, missing visual and non-visual orientation cues, page structure, and other navigational aids, and inconsistent, unpredictable, and overly complicated navigation mechanisms and page functions. The fourth grouping of disabilities is speech. Six speech disability examples are apraxia of speech, also known as AOS, cluttering, dysarthria, speech sound disorder, stuttering, and muteness. Individuals with speech disabilities often have difficulty producing speech that is recognizable by others or by voice recognition software. They also tend to need alternative modes of interaction, such as a text-based chat, in order to interact with hotline representatives, as well as keyboard commands to better operate web applications. Those with speech disabilities also often need alternative means of communication made available to them, like email and feedback forms, for example. Two barriers for people with speech disabilities when interacting with the web include web-based services that rely on interaction using voice only and websites that offer phone numbers as the only way to communicate. The fifth and final grouping of disabilities is visual. Three visual disability examples are color blindness, low vision, and blindness. Visual disabilities can range from mild to moderate vision loss to more substantial and uncorrectable vision loss. Some people may have a reduced or lack of sensitivity to certain colors or have increased sensitivity to bright colors. People with visual disabilities often rely on changing the presentation of web content, which includes enlarging or reducing text size and images, being able to customize fonts, colors, and spacing, listening to text-to-speech synthesis of content, as well as audio descriptions of video, and reading text using Braille. To better meet the needs of those with visual disabilities, developers need to ensure that the presentation of web content is independent of its underlying structure and can be coded so that it may be processed and presented in various ways by both web browsers and assistive technology. Some people may only see small portions of the content at a time or perceive colors and design differently. They may also have to navigate through content using a keyboard if they cannot see the mouse pointer. Some of the barriers for people with visual disabilities include images, controls, and other structural elements that do not have equivalent text alternatives, the inability to resize text, images, and page layouts, which often leads to a loss of information, missing visual or non-visual orientation cues, page structure, and other navigational aids, video without text or audio alternatives, inconsistent, unpredictable, and overly complicated navigation mechanisms and page functions, insufficient contrast between foreground and background color combinations, as well as websites, web browsers, and authoring tools that do not support the use of custom color combination and full keyboard support.
Now that you have a broad understanding and knowledge of a variety of diverse abilities and barriers, I will be following it up by discussing some tools and techniques that can be utilized to create more accessible content for a wide range of users. Two common approaches to interacting with the web include using assistive technologies and learning adaptive strategies. Assistive technologies are the software and hardware built into a technology that can assist users and improve their interactions with the web, such as screen readers for people who cannot read the text, or voice recognition software for people that cannot use a keyboard or mouse. Adaptive strategies are the learned techniques that people use to improve their web interactions using standard software, mainstream browsers, and assistive technologies. For example, increasing text size in computer settings or turning on captions while watching a video. Perception or the way in which people see the world, is affected by various senses and can be dependent on the individual. Some examples of perception include hearing, feeling, and seeing. Some people may not be able to perceive using one sense, so need the content to be converted from one form to another. For example, someone who is deaf and blind may require tactile content, such as Braille, to perceive. On the other hand, some individuals may need to perceive the content through multiple senses, such as both auditory and visual materials, to understand it better. There are methods that can be used to convert content to different formats. A refreshable Braille display is a mechanical device that displays Braille characters by raising and lowering different combinations of pins in the Braille cells and refreshes based on the input that it receives. It can connect to devices such as a computer or public information kiosk to transmit information using the sense of touch. Screen readers can similarly process content on desktops and web browsers to convert it to other formats, such as text to speech. Voice browsers allow people to navigate web browsers using an interactive voice user interface. Sometimes adjustments are used to make a presentation easier to distinguish and understand. Examples include making visual content easier to see using large text fonts, combining visual content, such as symbols, with written text to make content easier to comprehend, and providing alternative formats of the content, such as in sign language. There are various assistive technologies and adaptive strategies that people can use to make presentations easier to comprehend. Pop-up and animation blockers are software tools or web plugins that can hide or stop unwanted, distracting animations and web page redirections. Reading assistants are types of software that can change the presentation of content through customization of presentation text and colors, link complex sentences and words to glossaries, and reading the text out loud. Screen magnifiers can enlarge content and make it easier to see. There are different approaches to enter text and activate commands. Some individuals may not use a mouse, keyboard, or either. People may use different software and hardware or set up special configurations on their keyboards or mouse so that they can use them efficiently. Some examples are accelerators, which are software that reduce the effort needed to type or click. For example, by providing options to create shortcuts for commands or helping to steer the mouse. People may own keyboards with larger keys or key spacing, or even use eye tracking software instead of a mouse. Word prediction software can save time on typing. Individuals can also customize keyboards and mouses to meet their needs, such as lowering the sensitivity of the mouse or setting sticky keys to support single-handed typing. They could also use voice commands instead of typing altogether. User information behavior and interactions with technology to find and navigate information can vary depending on personal preferences, skills, and abilities. User-friendly software should be simple to use and comprehend, as well as incorporate features that support different styles and abilities to navigate the web. Bookmarks on web browsers are a great example of reducing the need to type a web address. Keyword searches can provide more precise research results. Keyboard navigation capabilities within web browsers are important for individuals that can't use a mouse. Page maps are small images of the entire web page with an indicator highlighting the portion within the web page that is currently being viewed, which can help for individuals that need to use screen magnifiers. I will now guide you through two situational scenarios relating to topics that have been discussed throughout this presentation. In this first scenario, Lee is colorblind and encounters barriers when shopping online for clothing. He has one of the most common visual disabilities that affect men, red and green colorblindness. Lee frequently shops online for work attire and often encounters problems on websites and clothing apps where the color contrast of text and images is not adequate and where color alone is used to indicate required fields and sale prices. When red and green color combinations are used, Lee cannot distinguish between the two, since both look brown to him. It is also very difficult to make product choices when color swatches are not labeled with the name of the color. Let's ponder the question of what kind of assistive technologies or adaptive strategies could be used to make Lee's experience with online shopping and clothing apps more accessible. Some of the possible technologies or strategies that Lee could use include allowing him the ability to customize coloring on websites and applications to better address his needs. The implementation of audio cues and descriptions that provide a detailed visualization as to what color the article of clothing may be. Embedded software that provides system suggestions for pieces that best match articles of clothing that Lee is most interested in, as well as ensuring that websites and applications provide sufficient contrast between foreground and background colors and always label the colors of clothing swatches so that Lee can distinguish one from the other. In this second scenario, Kasim is a teenager who is deaf and recently became legally blind too, which means she can only see small portions of a screen and read text when it is significantly enlarged. Let's ponder the question of what kind of assistive technologies or adaptive strategies could be used to make a public transportation online site more accessible for Kasim. Firstly, screen magnification could be used to enlarge the text to a size visible to Kasim. For this to work properly for Kasim, the website would need to reflow and wrap properly to the text when magnified so as not to be confusing for Kasim's web page navigation. A large computer or phone screen with a high resolution and high brightness would be ideal to make the screen more visible for Kasim. Screen reader software displaying text on a refreshable braille device could be another method of assistive technology that Kasim could use. For more information about how people with disabilities use the web, please visit the Web Accessibility Initiative at www.w3.org.